Week 13 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for this week. The first hitter, Julio Rodriguez of the Seattle Mariners. So Julio Rodriguez, he did the same thing last season, where he got off to a super slow start, and then August and September is where he really got it going, finishing with 32 home runs, 103 RBIs, 37 stolen bases, and a 275 average. So this year, 7 home runs, 29 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, 36 runs scored, a 254 average, and a 304 on base. So Julio Rodriguez, he's still getting the stolen bases. The power RBI numbers are way down, but the batting average isn't bad. So right now, well, he's been in a major slump over the last few weeks. 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 3 runs scored, a 152 average, and 220 on base. He's a buy low hitter this week, and with the weather warming up in the hot summer months, I think Rodriguez is going to get things going. Like I said, we saw it last season where he had a monster second half and he was a hitter you couldn't get out. And this is the time to go out there and get him going off track record. June 21st at the Marlins, 1 for 4. June 23rd at the Marlins, 0 for 5. June 24th at Tampa Bay, 0 for 3. June 25th at Tampa Bay, 0 for 4. So he's slumping big time, is Rodriguez. And this is a perfect time to buy him before he goes out there and he starts getting going. Because once he gets on a streak, those owners who own Rodriguez are going to want to keep him after waiting all season for him to break out. The next hitter, Dansby Swanson of the Chicago Cubs. So in his second season with the Cubs, it really hasn't been a great year for Swanson. 8 home runs, 26 RBIs, 31 runs scored, 5 stolen bases, a 217 average, and a 292 on base. So the batting average doesn't worry me with Swanson. We know throughout his career, he'll hit anywhere from 220, 270 range at best. Where last year went 22 and 80 with a 244 average. But the last couple weeks, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, a stolen base, 3 runs scored, a 171 average, and a 261 on base. Obviously, Swanson's numbers were big in that contract year when he was with the Atlanta Braves, and especially all those great hitters in the lineup where you're going to get great pitches to hit when a team has to worry about Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna, and then Swanson being the 5th or 6th option in that lineup. But right now with the Cubs, he was a big-time signing, and they gave him a lot of money a few off seasons ago, and he's not producing. But another player, it's getting warm on the East Coast. Wrigley Field, that ball really flies out in these summer months, and I think Swanson could get the power going and even bump the average up. So right now, well, he hasn't done much. We know shortstop's a weak position in fantasy baseball. I would put out trade offers for Swanson June 22nd versus the Mets, 1 for 4, run on rib. June 23rd versus the Mets, 1 for 4. June 24th at the Giants, 2 for 3 in RBI. And June 25th at the Giants, 0 for 3. So right now, well, he's slumping for the majority of the season. He's a perfect buy low candidate this week. The next hitter, Luis Robert Jr. of the Chicago White Sox. So Robert Jr. last year was a monster year with 38 homers, 80 RBIs, 20 bags, a 264 average, but he's missed the majority of the season. He's only had 96 at-bats, 7 home runs, 11 RBIs, 14 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 198 average, and a 280 on base for Robert. He's been a hot name on the MLB trade deadline block, where I think the Philadelphia Phillies make sense for Robert, or the Atlanta Braves, who obviously lost Ronald Acuna for the season many weeks ago. So right now, this White Sox team, it's going to be a fire sale, and everyone's up for grabs, supposedly. And those teams, like I mentioned, the Braves and Phillies have good farm systems to give the White Sox good, young, controllable players and really go into a total rebuild even more than they are now. June 22nd at Detroit, 1 for 5, a runner stolen base. June 24th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 2. And June 25th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 5 with a run. So Robert, he really hasn't done much. Batting average is way low. The power numbers still pretty solid, though. 7 home runs and 96 at-bats. But over the last couple weeks, he's minorly struggled, and he's a player that I believe definitely wants out. And it's tough to play on a team when you're almost 40 games under 500 and losing every game. So right now, with his name being in the rumor mill, we'll see what happens within the next month towards the MLB trade deadline. Like I said, if he goes to Atlanta or the Philadelphia Phillies, his numbers are going to spike way up, and he pay off big dividends and help owners win fantasy leagues this season. Next hitter, Vinny Pasquinto of the Kansas City Royals. So Pasquinto, he got off to a nice start the first couple months of the year, but he slowed down a little bit, even though he still has 48 RBIs on the season. 8 homers, 48 RBIs, 35 runs scored, a 232 average, and a 311 on base. But over the last 2 weeks here, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 5 runs scored, a 196 average, and a 302 on base. His on-base percentage is still solid for Pasquinto. Like I said, the RBIs I like, but everything else, pretty much hasn't been good this season here for Pasquinto, especially over the last month of the season. June 21st at the Rangers, 1 for 4. June 22nd at Texas, 0 for 4. June 23rd at the Rangers, 0 for 3. June 24th versus the Marlins, 1 for 4, a homer and RBI. And June 25th versus the Marlins, 1 for 4, an RBI. So Pasquinto, he's still going to cost a decent price, but his numbers definitely dropped off over the last few weeks, because 48 RBIs at this point of the season, with July approaching, is a solid number where he could easily finish the year anywhere with 90 to 100 RBIs. So you're still going to pay the decent price for Pasquinto, but the price has come down a little bit over the last few weeks with his numbers dropping off. So right now, I think a decent starting pitcher in a deal for Pasquinto could get the job done. If you need a first baseman or utility hitter, and the fifth and final hitter I look to buy and trade for is Adolis Garcia of the Texas Rangers. I know Adolis Garcia, the home run numbers have been impressive this season, 14 homers, but he really hasn't done much, Garcia, over the last month of the year. And he was on the list last week as well on the season, 14 home runs, 42 RBIs, 39 runs scored, 6 stolen bases, a 219 average, and a 281 on base. So that on base percentage, 281, not great at all for Adolis Garcia, where we know he's a free swinger, and he's one of the hardest swingers in all Major League Baseball. In the last month, like I mentioned, 2 homers, 5 RBIs, 2 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, 13 runs scored, a 165 average, and a 258 on base. So Garcia, he's still hitting the occasional home run, but besides that, his numbers have been idle over the last month. The June 22nd versus the Royals, 1 for 4, a run, a rib. June 23rd versus the Royals, 1 for 3, a run. June 24th at the Brewers, 2 for 4, a homer and RBI. And June 25th at the Brewers, 1 for 4. So Garcia mightily struggling right now for this Texas Ranger team. And this Ranger team as a whole, for the most part, they're trying to dig themselves out of an early season struggle and at least trying to get to 500, because that's the first step for any team. If you're below 500, you get to 500, and then you go from there. And hopefully Garcia gets going. But right now, well, he's been struggling. He's a perfect buy low candidate, because we saw it in the playoffs last season. He went on the tear. He helped carry the Rangers to the World Series, and we've seen some monster years out of him. And we saw last season hitting 39 home runs in the regular season before that great playoff run. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for Week 13 of the fantasy baseball season.